It started with the cross. Not a sermon, not a protest. Just a thin silver cross that had hung around my neck for 11 years, quiet and steady, through death, recovery, and 3 promotions. It lay against the soft silk of my blouse that morning, right above the faint beat of my pulse. By noon, I was told to remove it. Not asked. Told. Like it was a smudge on the lens of the company's ambition. And in that moment, in the sterile chill of a conference room that smelled like stale coffee and sales desperation, something in me started keeping score. The stand-up that morning had been routine at first, buzzwords echoing off glass walls, synergy, pipeline, scalable outreach. Our VP of sales, Marcus, who always dressed like he'd just stepped off a golf course where deals were sealed with clinks of bourbon glasses, stood at the head of the table, flanked by smiles that didn't reach eyes. I sat 2 seats from the end, notebook open, pen ready, as I always did. I wasn't the loudest, but I knew our platform inside out. I'd run the last 4 product demos to standing ovations, even got a personal thank you from one CFO. But none of that mattered that morning. "Big fish on the line," Marcus announced, eyes flicking around the room, landing briefly on mine before skipping past like he'd seen something inconvenient. "Finbank. Multi-million-dollar licensing potential. They've got regional offices from Dubai to Toronto, and they're very particular. Cultural neutrality, clean optics, no distractions." Distractions. The word sat like rot behind his teeth. Then came the shift, veiled at first. "We're doing a deck refresh. Tighter visuals, less personality, more polish." His tone was casual, but it had that undercurrent, the kind that said the decisions had already been made and your feelings were merely ornamental. "Oh, and one small note for client-facing folks. Let's be mindful of visual signals. Finbank's conservative, global eyes. We sell platforms, not personal narratives." My heart didn't drop. It calcified. He kept going. "We want everyone on message, on brand, and above all, neutral." The word neutral pinged in my chest like a warning bell. I knew what it meant. I just wanted to hear him say it. At the end of the stand-up, when people started closing their laptops and stretching like nothing had happened, Marcus motioned for me to stay back. Just me. He shut the glass door with a practiced calm. "Quick one," he said, and I could already see the spin forming behind his eyes. "You're gonna be in the orbit of this deal. We need full alignment. That necklace, the cross, maybe tuck it in. Clients want neutrality, not your story." I didn't speak. I reached into my bag and clicked my pen. One clean, smooth stroke in the corner of my notebook. "Take off the cross. Clients want neutrality, not your story." He noticed. His smile tightened. "And don't say where you're from," he added, voice dropping slightly. "No background stuff. We're selling a platform, not your biography." Another line in my notebook. I didn't look up. He mistook my silence for agreement. "I know it's a small ask, but we need 0 noise. Clean presentation, clean optics. That's how we win." He left before I could respond, and maybe that was smart. Because when I looked at my reflection in the dark screen of my laptop, I wasn't sure what emotion was staring back. It wasn't rage. Not yet. It was something colder, sharper, the kind of clarity that comes just before the storm. I didn't remove the cross, not that day, but I did take note of every single thing. When I got back to my desk, I pulled out a fresh notebook, titled it "For the Record," not as a threat, just a log, just the truth. I started with the date, the room, the quotes, every word Marcus had said. Then I flipped to a clean page and wrote one sentence in the center. If they want empty, let them hear the echo. What they didn't know, what Marcus had never bothered to learn about me, was that I'd been documenting silence my whole life. You don't grow up as a woman of faith and color in tech without learning how to hold your breath until the right room hears you. This was just another room. By lunchtime, the message was spreading. Not formally, but I heard it. From how Daryl in marketing avoided eye contact. From the way Lara whispered, "We got the guidelines talk too," with an eye roll before slipping back into a safe joke about decaf options. The shift was on. The quiet dissection of personhood, the soft policies wrapped in client comfort. I'd seen it before. Now it had a name. Neutrality. That night at home, I laid the silver cross on the table beside my laptop. I didn't wear it to bed, but I didn't put it away either, because this wasn't about faith. It wasn't even about the deal. It was about the story they didn't want me to carry, the shape of me they wanted to blur. I smiled, not from peace, but from precision. And I wrote one last line before bed. Every system has a record. I'm building mine. The email came 3 days later. Subject line: Guidelines for client-facing attire. No greeting, no signature, just a link to a PDF hosted on the internal HR portal. Beneath that, one line: For your reference before the FinBank call next week. The sender was Jocelyn from HR. I knew her by face, not by friendship. All pastel cardigans and perfumed small talk. She once told me I gave earthy mystic vibes after I mentioned I read C.S. Lewis. I hadn't replied. Now she was sending me policy. I opened the PDF on my lunch break, still at my desk. I'd skipped the cafeteria. Not hungry. Not for food, anyway. Inside the document, there were diagrams, yes, actual diagrams, of acceptable visual alignment. Suits, muted palettes, modest jewelry, allowed only if culturally ambiguous. No patterns, no logos, no symbols associated with political or religious affiliation. The cross around my neck practically glowed off the page. I scrolled to the bottom and saw it. Policy last revised, October 3rd, 2024. 2 days ago. Right after Marcus spoke to me. Right after I started logging. They weren't just nudging now. They were writing it down. Codifying erasure into Helvetica and bullet points. I printed it. Highlighted every line that reeked of selective exclusion. Then I filed it in the folder labeled "For the Record." Later that afternoon, I booked a 15-minute calendar slot with Jocelyn. She replied within a minute. "Happy to clarify anything." That smiley face was doing the heavy lifting. Her office was a glass box wedged between 2 hallway windows. I sat down across from her just as she clicked into my profile on the company intranet. My name and face stared back at me from her screen. "So," she chirped, too brightly, "I assume you saw the email. It's nothing personal. We're just tightening up consistency." I nodded. The timing felt targeted. She tilted her head, lips pursed. "Not at all. We've been reviewing client feedback trends. It's more about optimization than anything else. Clients trust clean, professional presentation." "And clean means less identity?" I asked, pen already in hand. Jocelyn's smile flickered. "We encourage everyone to bring their full selves, but also to adapt to context. Some clients prefer simplicity, minimal distractions." Distractions. There it was again. She said it like I was a PowerPoint animation someone forgot to disable. I leaned forward. "So the cross I wear, the accent in my voice, the way I answer when someone asks, 'Where are you from?' all of that is considered a distraction?" "Not exactly." She was blinking more now. It helps to focus on the product, not personal narratives." Some people have found that your style, while passionate, might be a bit too personal, that it impacts conversion. I smiled then, not warmly. Is that in the data? I asked. Because I have win-loss numbers right here, and client sentiment from our last 5 pitches. I slid my phone across the table. Screenshots, engagement scores. The latest Net Promoter Score had my name specifically mentioned twice in the positive column. Jocelyn didn't touch the phone. She leaned back, folding her hands. Look, this isn't disciplinary. It's just guidance. We're not telling you who to be, just to keep things client-friendly. That's all. Make yourself empty, I said aloud, quoting the policy. Jocelyn blinked. Excuse me? That's what it says, doesn't it? I pulled the printed guidelines from my bag, tapped the 3rd page. Make yourself a clean slate. Empty sells better in global markets. I underlined it with my pen. Slowly. She hesitated, then laughed nervously. Well, that's just corporate speak. You know how these things get worded. No, I thought. I know exactly how they get worded, with intent. I stood. Thanks for the clarification, Jocelyn. As I left, she called after me, We're just trying to keep you in the game. But I was already walking, and I wasn't playing anymore. I was watching, recording, mapping the terrain like a soldier pacing off a minefield. Back at my desk, I opened my notebook again. Not the client notes. The other one. November 2nd. HR meeting. PDF sent post-briefing. Timeline matches verbal directive. Language confirms intentional narrowing of identity presentation. Phrase logged. Make yourself empty. Empty sells better. Attribution of conversion impact, without evidence. I closed the notebook gently. My fingers brushed the cross at my collarbone. Still visible. Still defiant. They hadn't asked me to take it off again. Not today. But I could feel it coming. The rumors started next. Whispers in the break room. Someone muttering my name after I left a call early. A Slack message, quickly deleted, that read, She's strong but kinda heavy in meetings. Heavy. Another word for visible, for not being silent enough. I archived it. Screenshot, timestamp. Tucked into the growing collection. Every client call after that was different. Eyes flicking to my necklace, to my name. Some people stopped replying to my updates. Some just forwarded them to others, like I was a ghost passing through a chain of command that used to see me. And still, I showed up, ran demos, led prep sessions, fixed bugs in the prototype code before they even surfaced. But inside, I was taking stock, not just of what they said, but of what they feared, and the silence they demanded. It was about to meet a sound they couldn't control. It started like erosion, not an avalanche, not an explosion. Just a shift so subtle you'd miss it if you weren't keeping track. But I was tracking everything. My name was removed from the next client deck. No explanation, no warning. Just the Tuesday version of the presentation landing in my inbox with someone else's name at the bottom of slide 15. The demo slot. Slide 15 had always been mine. It was where I walked prospects through the security layer of our platform, the part I'd helped engineer in the first place. Instead, it read, Lead Technical Overview, Connor Fields. Connor, nice guy, good jawline. Never wrote a single line of the new logic we'd built in Q3. I stared at the deck, then at the message thread above it. Let's keep the pitch simple for Finbank. Connor's voice tested well in the prep call. Tested well. Like I was a product being A/B tested for defects. No one said my name. They didn't have to. That same day, I walked into the war room to prep our sequence for the upcoming call and found the whiteboard already wiped. Notes gone. Replaced with a new flow diagram, neat, color-coded and void of anything I'd contributed. Connor looked up when I paused at the threshold. "Hey," he said, too casually, "just smoothing things out. You good with being a silent observer on this one?" I didn't answer. I just pulled out my notebook and jotted it down. November 6th, Connor takes deck slot plus uses whiteboard space I designed, called Observer. I watched from the back of the room while they rehearsed without me. They even laughed through it, like nothing had shifted, like the absence of my voice wasn't seismic. But it was. Not to them, to me. I could hear Marcus in the hallway afterward, talking to Maya from product strategy. My name floated between them like an afterthought. "Her style can spook a client," Marcus was saying, too pointed. "We're just optimizing." Optimizing. That word again, like my absence was a performance enhancement. I wrote that down too. In our next planning call, my case study, the one I'd spent 2 weeks building with layered data visualization and client heat maps, was cut. Marcus said, "It's strong, but maybe too detailed. Let's not overwhelm them." Instead, he assigned the client's summary to Darren. Darren, who once confused SOC2 with SAS2, who once called our backend the back button on a live call. Darren got the airtime. I got silence. In the weekly deck review, I noticed something else. Connor had pasted one of my lines, word for word, onto his slide, a line I'd used in the last pitch. "Our platform doesn't just reduce risk, it redefines trust." There it was, centered. No attribution. I looked around the room, waiting to see if anyone would call it out. No one did. So I raised my hand, deadpan. "That phrasing on slide 4, I wrote that, for the August pitch to DevBank." Connor blinked. "Oh, right. It tested well, so I reused it." Marcus didn't blink. "It's a team deck." Then Maya chimed in. "And we're all borrowing from the same voice." The same voice. My voice. Stripped of ownership and offered up as communal inventory. I didn't fight them in the room, but in my notebook, November 9th, slide language stolen, credited to team, response, same voice. That weekend, I went back through Slack threads from the last 3 months. I tallied every time my input was thanked publicly, 3. I tallied every time Connor's was, 12. And yet, in every metrics report, my deliverables ranked top 3. Every client follow-up email mentioned clarity, structure, depth, my words. But internally, the story was shifting. They were scrubbing me out, like a detail in a painting that made the viewer uncomfortable. At lunch the following week, I overheard Sophie from customer success say to another AE, "She's great, but kind of intense. Like, full volume presence. Sometimes you want the frame without the painting, you know?" The frame without the painting. I logged it. Didn't interrupt. Didn't cry. Just filed it in a folder called Erasure by Optimization. And when the email came from Marcus that Friday, titled New Demo Rotation Strategy, I already knew what it would say. It said I'd be moving into a support-only role for the pitch, more behind the scenes, less front-facing. It said we were reimagining leadership distribution to allow new voices to rise. It said I would remain an integral part of the team. What it meant was stay invisible, stay valuable, but mute. That night, I stayed late in the office. Everyone else gone. Lights humming like a tired engine. I pulled up the internal diversity reports, the company's official DEI statement, the onboarding doc that promised every identity, every voice, and I compared it, line by line, to my email thread. Then I started a spreadsheet, named it Pressure Log. 1 column for date, 1 for incident, 1 for exact quotes. By the end of the night, there were 19 entries. I saved it to a flash drive, put it in my purse. The next morning, I came in early again. Cross still on, quiet smile intact. And when Darren tried to joke that, maybe you should coach me for the next pitch, I smiled wider. Because I'd already started coaching something else. A reckoning. Revenge doesn't come with fireworks. It starts like a ledger. Quiet, methodical, cold. I stopped defending myself and started documenting them. Not just words, but patterns, dates, duplicates. That's the secret to power. Not volume, but proof. So I built mine, line by line. The morning after I was officially removed from the FinBank demo, I printed our religious accommodation policy. 6 pages. Small print. A full paragraph promising protection for visible symbols, provided they do not disrupt core job duties. I highlighted that clause in yellow, wrote, "My necklace isn't a grenade" in the margin, and clipped it into the binder labeled compliance stack. Then I started recording meetings. Legally. Our state is single-party consent, and I made damn sure I stayed within the lines. I used the company-issued laptop's own tools, nothing fancy. No cloak and dagger, just Teams call recordings, calendar invites, public logs. The first tape came from a weekly strategy sync. 6 people on video, one being Marcus, mid-tirade about removing friction. "It's not about discrimination," he said. "It's about prevention. FinBank has 0 tolerance for personal signals. Take them off, or we take you out." I played it back 3 times, wrote out the transcript by hand. That clip went in the folder too. 2 days later, Maya pinged me privately on Slack. "Heads up, Marcus wants you to fade into frame next quarter." His words. Fade into frame. Like I was background furniture. I responded, "Got it. Appreciate the transparency." Screenshot, save. Log entry 27. At night, I started cross-checking everything. Our DEI training from onboarding. The public-facing blog post our CEO published last April. At our company, inclusion isn't just policy, it's practice. The video featured a smiling intern wearing a yarmulke, talking about how he felt seen. I pulled that clip too. Saved it. Filed it under discrepancies, external versus internal. The thing is, I wasn't alone. I just hadn't realized it yet. It was a Tuesday, rainy, low clouds pressing down on the city, when I saw Zaira in the elevator, tugging at her hijab. Not removing it, just adjusting it like someone who'd had to justify it one too many times. I nodded to her. She gave me that look, weary, polite, resigned. By Thursday, I asked her if she'd had any optimization conversations lately. She laughed once, bitter. "They told me the same thing they told you. Different words, same message." And that's when I started connecting dots. Same hallway, same directives, different targets. I bought coffee for Neil, the DevOps engineer who'd been mysteriously removed from the latest pitch after leading the build for months. Seek, soft-spoken, and sharper than anyone gave him credit for. He said, "They told me it's better if someone with less visual distinction handles the walkthrough." Visual distinction. He didn't even flinch when he said it, just drank his coffee like he'd swallowed that sentence before. Then there was Ellen, senior engineer, Army vet, wore her service pin every Friday. "They told me not to mention it to FinBank," she said. Too political. Too political. A pin, a history, a life. By the end of the week, I had 3 more names, 3 more stories, all with the same rotten core, and something hardened in me. Not anger, not yet. Something older. Strategy. I called an old friend, Soraya, a civil rights lawyer who once helped me navigate a wrongful termination case at a previous firm. We hadn't spoken in over a year, but when she picked up, her voice was steady and surgical. Talk to me, she said. I did. Emails, recordings, the changing deck slots, the shifting language. I gave her everything. She said 2 words after I finished: hostile environment. Then she told me exactly what to do next. Keep logging, don't confront. You're building a pressure chamber. But make sure every document is time-stamped, and for God's sake, back it all up in 2 locations. So I did. I added a spreadsheet tab labeled Witnesses. I listed the others, what they were told, when, who said it, cross-referenced against org charts and Slack channels. I created a private Google Drive with read-only links, one I could share with legal at any moment. The next time Marcus pulled me aside and said, "Look, we're not discriminating, we're streamlining," I just smiled, logged it, added the quote verbatim under Casual Verbal Justifications, NOV 14. And when I walked into our next all-hands and saw my cross reflected in the window beside me, I didn't reach for it. I let it shine. Because by then I wasn't documenting injustice. I was constructing a timeline, a map. And if they thought removing me from a slide deck would erase me, they'd never seen what happened when a woman builds her own. The first ally didn't speak. She nodded. It happened in the hallway 3 days after I filed my latest pressure log update. Zaira passed me by the espresso machine, a single second of eye contact. That was all. But in it, I saw what I needed: recognition, then resolve. I sent her a meeting invite later that afternoon. No subject line, just the word: coffee. We met 2 blocks from the office. Neutral ground, neutral clothes. Nothing on us that screamed too much of anything. We looked like coworkers dodging a late-day sync, but we were more than that. We were witnesses, survivors. Zaira spoke first. I didn't say anything last year when they cut me from the Amsterdam pitch. I was told the client had concerns about certain conservative markets that I could support from the back end. She took a slow sip of chai. I believed them, told myself I was being too sensitive. I nodded. That's how they win. They get you to doubt your gut before you even file the thought. Her lips curled into a half smile. This time, I'm not deleting the feeling. I'm ready. The next name I added to the list was Neil. We spoke over takeout in the lobby of a co-working space he liked. They told me my turban might invite assumptions, he said, eyes narrowed. As if assumptions aren't their problem to address. I was running the architecture team until I wasn't. Now I'm consulting remotely on projects I built. His anger wasn't loud. It was precise. He'd printed internal org charts and showed me where his name had been moved in the hierarchy after his demo was canceled. No title change, just rearranged power, like he was a variable pushed down the stack. Then came Ellen. She didn't need convincing. I only had to say, "I'm building something," and she replied, "What took you so long?" She'd been keeping her own records, printed emails, snide remarks, a direct Slack from a junior PM that read, "Maybe tone down the soldier stuff. These clients are sensitive to conflict." Conflict. As if her service was a warning, not a history. She pulled out a worn folder from her satchel. Inside, a printed timeline of every pitch she was removed from since the new neutrality directive began. It lined up with mine like matching scars. "Let's sync calendars," she said, as if we were plotting bandwidth, not justice. At this point, the map was undeniable. 4 different employees, 4 different signals, same erasure. We weren't anomalies. We were proof. That night, I added a new tab to the pressure log, pattern confirmation. Rose, Zaira, removed from the Amsterdam pitch for wearing a hijab, March 2025. Neil, sidelined from Finbank over his turban, October 2025. Ellen, dropped from the Denver proposal for her veteran PIN, July 2025. Me, excluded from the Finbank pitch for my cross necklace, November 2025. All were told different versions of the same lie. It's not about you, it's about the client. But the truth? It was always about us, about the parts of us that didn't shrink, didn't blend. The next move came from Soraya. She arranged a call with a pro bono employment attorney named Rajiv, who specialized in corporate bias cases. We joined from separate rooms, all on mute until it was our turn. His voice was steady, clinical, sharp. "What you're describing constitutes a textbook hostile environment," he said. "They've taken visible identities and reframed them as risk indicators. That violates multiple federal protections. It's discrimination by proxy. And if retaliation follows, they'll have no legal cover." He asked if we had documentation. I shared the link to the drive. 30 seconds of silence followed while he scanned. Then, "You did your homework." It wasn't praise. It was confirmation. "Are you seeking individual action or collective pressure?" he asked next. I didn't look at the others on the call. I already knew. Collective, internal first. Then, if needed, external. He outlined the strategy. Present the findings to internal compliance with timelines, cross-referenced policies, and direct impact. Then request formal investigation. Use their own guidelines as the benchmark. No emotion, no theatrics, just evidence. "Most companies only move when they see liability," he said. "Show them the liability." I thanked him, logged the call time, added legal consult complete to the pressure log. Next, we drafted a joint letter. No threats, just facts. Subject line: request for formal internal review, client-facing identity policy practices. It outlined every timeline, every exclusion, every coded phrase. We cited the religious and cultural accommodation policies. We referenced the DEI charter. We attached annotated versions of the guidelines, side by side with internal communications. Then we each signed our names. I scheduled it to send at 9:01 a.m. on Monday, just after the inbox flood, but before the first stand-up. That Sunday night, I sat in my apartment with the lights low, cross still around my neck, laptops off, silence humming. I didn't feel fear. I felt ready. Because the difference between being erased and being erased on record is this: one gets lost, the other becomes a case. They called it rotation, but what they meant was vanish. After we submitted the review letter, there was no open backlash, no emails, no confrontations, just silence. The kind that wraps itself around your role and starts tightening. My calendar thinned. My deck access was temporarily suspended for version control. Connor ran point on Finbank. Marcus stopped tagging me in threads. My name slipped further down the team roster in our pitch sheets until I wasn't listed at all. But the funny thing about being erased, it makes you hard to track. And when no one's watching, you're free to move. So I did. At night, I stayed in the office long after the last Slack bubble dimmed. I built a pitch no one asked for, the version they should have used from the start. Not flash, not theater, just pain points and proof. I pulled real Finbank data, anonymized, publicly available, and ran it through our risk simulator. Built a modular pitch layer showing live ROI projections based on 3 rollout scenarios. I coded a toggle to illustrate compliance savings with every workflow shift. No filler, no fluff, just frictionless architecture mapped to their exact structure. It wasn't revenge, it was precision. On the side, I read every article the Finbank CTO had published in the last year. 2 in FinTech Futures, 1 in Enterprise Stack. He'd mentioned a need for modular platforms that don't just scale, but adapt under scrutiny. That became my thesis line. I wrote it right into the executive summary. Then came the pre-read. Marcus had been planning to send a glossy summary doc, graphs, empty buzzwords, a headshot of Connor in a blazer he wore like a borrowed identity. Instead, I built something different. Clean, simple, credible. I didn't attach my name. I just used the generic team email alias, attached the file, and hit send. But before I did, I added one line. Built by the engineer who wrote the simulation logic. We thought you might want to preview how it actually works. And beneath that, a short .mp4, a demo walkthrough with voiceover. Calm, focused. My voice. I used a screen alias. No face. Just architecture and clarity. I didn't tell anyone. Not because I was afraid. Because I was measuring their silence. That weekend, I got a LinkedIn ping from a Finbank Solutions director. No words. Just a connection request. Then, a second one, from a senior systems officer. Both had viewed my profile. Monday came. No bomb went off. No meetings called. But in the Tuesday prep call, Marcus's voice dropped an octave when he said, Finbank sent a message over the weekend, asked for someone specific to join Thursday's pitch. He didn't say my name, but he looked right at me. I didn't react, just clicked my pen. Noted the timestamp. 11:42 a.m. Later that day, in a meeting labeled Deck Finalization, Internal Only, I watched as Darren ran through the demo script. He stumbled over the same segment for the third time, and Connor, trying to help, said, We can just cut that part. It's too technical. That part. It was the section that mapped to Finbank's main regulatory constraint, the one I'd solved. I watched them toss it aside like a prop they didn't know how to use. That night, I revised the deck again, quietly. I kept their branding, their color scheme, their names, but I rebuilt the logic tree behind every chart, streamlined the story, backed every number with traceable data points. I used their language, but tied it back to the architecture I designed. Then I saved 2 versions, one for Thursday, one for me. The day before the pitch, Marcus pulled me into a call with Connor and Sophie. We're locking roles, he said. Connor opens, Darren demos. Sophie handles objections. He glanced at the agenda, pretending to read it. You're on standby. Standby. Like a generator in the basement. Like a fallback plan you hope won't speak. He added, Let's keep the room stable. Finbank wants consistency. I nodded once and thought, then they'll be very interested in what I've built. That night, I ran the full pitch simulation alone. In the dark. It flowed. Data to risk. Pain to solution. ROI to roadmap. 42 minutes. Clean. Precise. Unmistakably mine. I recorded it. Uploaded it to the drive. Then I went home, slipped off my shoes, and laid my silver cross gently on the nightstand. Not hidden, not symbolic. Just resting. Because tomorrow, I didn't need to wear it for them to know who I was. The morning of the pitch, I dressed carefully. Not to please anyone. Not to rebel. Just to be deliberate. Slate gray blazer. No branding. Tailored but plain. Hair pinned back. Minimal makeup. Functional flats. And the cross, the same one they'd told me to tuck away, lay flat against my collarbone, visible but quiet. Not a statement. A fact. I arrived before anyone else. Conference room C, neutral beige, bad lighting, long glass wall facing the courtyard. I set up 2 laptops, one for the official demo, one for contingencies. I had 3 USB backups. The final pitch deck, the one they approved, the one I rebuilt in silence, lived on all of them. At 9:07, Marcus walked in. He paused when he saw me, then gave the tight smile he reserved for liability he couldn't yet fire. Client's due in 23, he said. Let's make sure there are no surprises." I didn't move. "There won't be." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded note card, and handed it to me. On it, a checklist. Connor opens Darren Run's demo Sophie Fields objections, name redacted, observes from back row, no personal signals visible, per client preference. My name had been replaced by a blank line. I stared at it. "No personal signals," I repeated. "You mean the cross?" Marcus didn't blink. "We've had this conversation. Finbank doesn't want distractions. They didn't mention that in their guidelines. They didn't have to." I watched him adjust his cuff. His hands were steady, but there was a twitch in his jaw, that barely there tick he got when things didn't land cleanly. "I'm here as myself," I said evenly. "That includes this." I tapped the chain gently. He stepped closer, dropped his voice. "You want to die on this hill? Fine. But don't say I didn't warn you if we lose the account." That was the last thing he said to me before the clients arrived. Finbank's team came in like a breeze of navy and gray, suits sharp, expressions unreadable. 5 of them. The CTO, 2 tech leads, a compliance officer, and a woman from procurement who didn't say much but noticed everything. Connor started on cue. "Welcome, and thanks for being here. We're excited to walk you through a platform that adapts as fast as your risks evolve." It wasn't a bad line, but it wasn't the one that landed. That came 3 minutes in when the CTO, a man named Ashwin Dev, interrupted. "Is she here?" Connor blinked. "I'm sorry." Ashwin turned toward Marcus, then pointed toward the back of the room, toward me. "Her? The engineer? The one who sent the pre-read and walkthrough video? The one who actually solved our compliance overlay?" The room stilled. Marcus swallowed. "That material was assembled by our team." "No," Ashwin said, firm now. "That was authored. That wasn't a team ghostwriting exercise. That was design. I want her running this." He looked at me directly. "Would you mind?" Connor half rose from his seat. Marcus opened his mouth. I stepped forward, slow and steady, slid past the lineup of suits like fog through floodlights. "Happy to lead," I said calmly. "If the numbers read better from here." The CTO smiled, not politely, with satisfaction. I clicked the deck open, full screen, my version, the real one, and began. No theatrics, no fillers, just clarity, architecture, logic, outcomes. I spoke with calm control, each segment flowing into the next like a quiet tide. No one interrupted, not even Sophie. When I finished, I closed the slide and stepped back. Ashwin looked at Marcus. "Your team has the strongest solution we've seen. We're ready to proceed, on one condition." Marcus's smile twitched. "Of course. What's that?" "We want a direct line to the person who built it. No filters, no politics." Silence. Ashwin added, almost as an afterthought, "And for what it's worth, we value transparency. That includes personal background. Signals of integrity aren't distractions." Then he stood, shook my hand, and thanked me, by name. The moment the door closed behind them, Marcus turned. His voice was a hiss. "You ambushed me by existing." I didn't reply. Didn't need to. The room was already reconfiguring around me. The client selection email arrived at 6:42 a.m. the next morning. It came straight from Ashwin's office, marked high priority, addressed to leadership, and CC'd to me directly. Subject: Final selection, platform partner for risk modularization. Paragraph 1 confirmed it. They chose us. Multi-million-dollar engagement. Multi-phase rollout. Paragraph 2 changed everything. Key to our decision was the alignment between product design and practical understanding of our regulatory needs. This was most evident in the solution authored and delivered by my full name. We expect her to be an ongoing point of contact. The air in my apartment turned sharp and thin, not from fear, from release. Because once a client speaks the truth in writing, spin dies on arrival. I stared at the line again, authored and delivered. My hands weren't shaking, they were still. By 8 Hong, I had compiled the full report. I didn't send it to HR, I sent it to compliance, and I copied the board. Inside the folder, every quote, every deck revision, every meeting recording and Slack message, the letter we'd filed, the ignored requests, the neutrality clause spliced next to their own DEI mission statements. At the end, I attached the client's email. Final file name, practice fees, policy, final.pdf. I hit send. Then I walked into the office and sat down at my desk like it was any other Thursday. Smiled at the receptionist, said good morning to Sophie, opened my notebook. But by 9:15, Marcus was standing in my doorway. Come with me. He didn't wait for a response, just turned, already angry. The glass conference room was empty except for him and the heat pulsing off his voice. You went around me. I followed protocol, I said. They requested me. I delivered. You undermined the chain of command. You deleted my name from the deck, twice. The chain was already broken. He pointed at the cross around my neck. This? You used it like a weapon, like bait. I tilted my head. It's a necklace. You're the one who made it an issue. You think the board is going to side with you because a client liked your numbers? I opened my folder and pulled out the hard copy of the email. I think they're going to side with the facts. His face cracked then, just slightly. The kind of crack you only see in someone who just realized the system isn't rigged enough to save them anymore. He hissed, We made you, and we can switch you off. I stared at him for a long moment, then smiled. You didn't make me. You muted me, and I documented every frame of it. I stood and left. The next day, everything changed. Compliance acknowledged receipt of the report. HR scheduled an urgent policy review. Leadership announced a pause on all new client guidelines, pending internal alignment. By Monday, the VP of Sales, Marcus, had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. By Wednesday, the sales director was mutually separated from the company. They didn't call it a scandal. They called it a strategic reevaluation. But everyone knew. The client's email went viral. Internally, of course. Word spread. My inbox filled with quiet thank you notes. From Zaira, from Neil, from people I didn't know, a junior dev in Toronto, an intern in Cape Town. All of them had been told, one way or another, to shrink. And now the shrinkage had a spotlight. At the Friday town hall, the CEO took the stage. He looked tired, but different, less polished, more human. He didn't mention me by name, but he said this. We built policies that we thought protected the company, but some of those policies erased the people who built it. We're going to change that. And then, neutrality should never mean invisibility. That was the line that hit. I stood in the back, not clapping, just present, just watching the system acknowledge itself. After the meeting, I got the calendar invite. New vertical, strategic lead planning, you've been selected. No flattery, no apology, just an offer. Earned. You never expect justice to wear loafers and carry a whiteboard. But when the audit team arrived, flown in from headquarters, 3 compliance officers and a paralegal, that's exactly what it looked like. Methodical, cold, quietly devastating. It started with interviews, closed door back-to-back, conducted in conference room B with a sound machine humming outside. They spoke with me first, then Zaira, then Neil and Ellen. Every one of us walked in with our own folders, our own annotated receipts. No emotions, just records. The lead investigator, Ms. Crane, a woman who looked like she hadn't raised her voice in 2 decades, asked one question that summed up the whole thing. Were you ever told your identity was incompatible with client success? I answered without blinking. Yes, repeatedly, and I wrote it all down. The interviews lasted 2 weeks. HR pretended it was routine culture alignment, but everyone knew. The hallway whispers got sharper. People stopped asking where I was. They knew I was in rooms where decisions got made now. Then came the town hall. It was a mandatory meeting. The whole company, global, virtual, and hybrid, logged in. One screen, hundreds of muted tiles, cameras off, waiting. The chief people officer spoke first. We have completed a full internal review of client-facing policy enforcement. She clicked to a slide titled Findings. Then the bullets. Inconsistent application of religious and cultural accommodation policy. Evidence of role reassignment based on visible identity. Retaliation masked as optimization. Documentation of systemic exclusion from strategic opportunities. No spin, no jargon, just data. She paused, then read aloud the sentence that mattered. We failed to align our inclusion promises with our actual practices. After her, the head of legal took over. He announced 3 things. Marcus, the former VP sales, was no longer employed at the company. All client-facing guidelines would be reviewed and rewritten with third-party oversight. Manager training on identity accommodation and DEI compliance would now be mandatory. Then came the apology. Not a press release, not a social post, a direct, on-record statement. To those whose identities were framed as liabilities instead of strengths, we see you now, and we're sorry. And then they named us, all 4 of us. Zaira, Neil, Ellen, me. Each name appeared on screen, next to one word, acknowledged. I didn't cry, but I felt my jaw loosen for the first time in months. Recognition doesn't erase what was done, but it closes a wound that silence keeps bleeding. Later that day, I got an email from Ashwin, the Finbank CTO. Subject, leadership. I've heard what's happening on your side. Maturity is measured by how companies respond to what they tried to hide. Respect to you for forcing the mirror up. He ended it with, looking forward to the next build. That night, I walked the quiet hallway past the framed pitch winds, past Connor's office, now reassigned, past the room where I was once told to fade into the background. I stepped into my new office, same desk, same laptop, but this time my name was on the door. Inside, there was a printout waiting on the chair. Draft. Religious and Cultural Accommodation Policy, V2. I didn't write it, but it quoted something I'd said in the compliance review. You don't protect identity by erasing it. You protect it by building space around it. I stood there, cross-glinting in the warm office light, and thought about all the rooms they tried to keep me out of. Now I was at the center of the map, and the new floor plan was being drawn with my pen. The new policy signing wasn't theatrical, no spotlight, no applause. Just a document laid on a table, passed between 2 people who understood exactly what had been broken and why it had to be rebuilt. I signed with a blue ink pen, date in the corner, my signature just beneath the title, Religious and Cultural Accommodation Policy, Revised Charter, 2026. Then I slid the second document across the table. Client-Facing Engagement and Ethics Framework. Drafted with legal. Reviewed by the board. Annotated by the people who were once erased. It didn't just protect symbols. It protected presence. The new framework made this clear. Neutrality isn't emptiness. It's clarity. It's about removing distraction from the product, not the people presenting it. For the first time, we made identity non-negotiable, not as ornament, but as right. After the signing, I stepped into my new role officially, Head of Strategic Solutions. Not a vanity title, real scope, full org under my lead. The irony? My first task was onboarding new talent. And in the first welcome kit we rolled out, right between the hardware checklist and team calendar, there was a page titled, Bring Your Whole Self. Below it, a sentence. You were hired for your mind. You're safe here as a person. We included real photos from across offices, hijabs, crosses, turbans, military pins. Every image had a caption. Every face had a name. We erased the silence that once replaced us. The first meeting I ran in my new role, I opened with a simple line. Visibility isn't vanity, it's design. People leaned in, took notes. No one flinched. Even the new hires, a mix of engineers, PMs, and analysts, sat comfortably, not worrying what they had to hide. No one got side eyes for what they wore or how they spoke. Their bios stayed intact. Their voices didn't have to flatten into corporate gray. The client who saw us first, Finbank, continued working with us. Quarterly expansions, ongoing consulting. In their year-end feedback, one line stood out. The reason we chose you wasn't just the product, it was the team, the people, the maturity to let them lead. That sentence lived in our next pitch deck. Page 2. I didn't need to lead every demo anymore. I didn't need to be in every room. Because now the room had changed. We built a new pipeline, not just for deals, but for justice. Every time someone whispered, should we be careful how that looks to the client? A manager now asked, careful why? Is it unprofessional or just unfamiliar to you? We trained not just for compliance. We trained for reflex, the instinct to ask why silence feels safer and who that instinct usually protects. That was the revenge, not public humiliation, not lawsuit drama, systemic change. Revenge is when they can't do it again, not to the next Zaira, not to the next Neil, not to the quiet intern who wears something someone once called distracting. We issued one last internal memo, final edit by me, reviewed by counsel. It closed with this. Neutrality is honesty about the product, not emptiness inside people. Empty cells until someone checks the numbers. The last thing I did before leaving the office that night, I touched the cross at my neck, not as a dare, not as defiance, just as something finally restored to stillness, mine, in full view, no longer debated and no longer up for removal.